The bullet grazed so close to Emma Hartwell's temple that she felt the heat of it sear past her skin. And in that single moment of terror, as she stumbled backward into the dusty street of Redemption, Colorado, she knew her life would never be the same. It was the spring of 1878, and the mining town had been plagued by a gang of ruthless outlaws for 3 months now. Men who took what they wanted and left destruction in their wake. Emma had been leaving the general store with her arms full of supplies for the boarding house. She ran when the shooting started, glass shattering from the bank windows as masked men poured out with bags of stolen money. People screamed and scattered, but Emma stood frozen in the middle of the street, her packages tumbling from her arms as she watched the chaos unfold before her eyes. Then hands grabbed her, rough and violent, yanking her backward. One of the outlaws had seized her as a shield, his arm crushing against her throat as he dragged her toward his horse. Emma tried to scream, but no sound came out. She could smell the whiskey on his breath, feel his fingers digging into her flesh through the fabric of her dress. The world tilted and spun, her vision narrowing to pinpoints of light as panic consumed her entirely. She heard more gunfire, felt the man's grip suddenly release, and then she was falling, hitting the ground hard enough to knock the wind from her lungs. When she could breathe again, when her eyes finally focused, she saw a tall figure standing over her, silhouetted against the bright Colorado sun. He wore a dusty brown hat and a long duster coat, and smoke curled from the barrel of the revolver in his hand. The outlaw who had grabbed her lay motionless several feet away. The stranger holstered his weapon and crouched down beside her, his face coming into view. He had sharp features softened by concern, dark eyes that held both gentleness and something harder beneath, and a scar that cut through his left eyebrow. "Are you hurt, ma'am?" His voice was low and steady, meant to calm. Emma tried to answer, but her whole body was shaking. When he reached out to help her up, she flinched so violently that she scrambled backward on her hands, her back hitting the wooden post of the boardwalk. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She could still feel those hands on her, could still smell the whiskey and gun smoke and fear. "Hey, easy now," the stranger said, immediately pulling his hand back and raising both palms where she could see them. "I am not going to hurt you, you are safe now." But Emma could not stop shaking. People were gathering around, faces she recognized from town, but they all seemed too close, the air too thick. Her breathing came in short, sharp gasps that made her chest ache. The stranger stood slowly, taking a deliberate step back to give her space. He said something to the crowd that Emma could not hear over the rushing in her ears, and then most of them dispersed, leaving just him and Doc Pritchard, the town physician who had pushed his way through to check on her. "Miss Hartwell, let me examine you," Doc Pritchard said, kneeling beside her with his medical bag. "Do not touch me," Emma heard herself say, the words coming out strangled and desperate. "Please do not touch me." The doctor paused, exchanged a glance with the stranger, then nodded. "All right, Emma. Can you tell me if you are injured anywhere? Just with words, I will not touch you unless you say I can." Emma forced herself to take inventory of her body. Her palms were scraped from hitting the ground, her throat ached where the outlaw's arm had pressed, and her hip throbbed from the fall, but nothing felt broken or bleeding. "I am fine," she managed. "I just need a moment." The stranger had removed his hat and was turning it in his hands, watching her with an expression she could not quite read. Concern, yes, but also understanding, as though he recognized something in her reaction that others might not. "The rest of the gang rode out," he said quietly. "Sheriff Mason and his deputies are going after them. You are safe here. Safe." The word felt foreign in her mouth. Emma pressed her back harder against the post, using it to lever herself to standing. Her legs trembled but held. She smoothed down her skirts with shaking hands, trying to gather the scattered pieces of her composure. "Thank you for your help," she said, forcing the words out with as much steadiness as she could muster. "I should get back to my boarding house." "I will walk with you," the stranger offered. "Make sure you get there all right." "That is not necessary." "Maybe not, but I would feel better knowing you made it home safe. I will keep my distance," he added, as though sensing her immediate tension at the idea. "Just want to make sure no trouble finds you again." Emma wanted to refuse, wanted to insist she could manage on her own, but the truth was her knees felt like water, and the thought of walking past the bank where the shooting had happened made her stomach turn. She gave a small, jerky nod. The stranger settled his hat back on his head and gestured for her to lead the way, then fell into step a good 6 feet behind her, true to his word. The boarding house stood at the end of Main Street, a 2-story building Emma had inherited from her aunt 2 years ago when she passed. It was painted a faded yellow with white trim, and the sign that read Hartwell House swung gently in the breeze. Emma climbed the steps to the porch, her hand trembling as she reached for the door handle. She paused there, gathering herself, then turned to look at the stranger who had stopped at the bottom of the steps. "I did not get your name," she said. "James Coulter, ma'am. Most people call me Cole." "Thank you, Mr. Coulter, for what you did." He touched the brim of his hat. "Just happened to be in the right place. You take care of yourself now." Emma slipped inside and closed the door, then leaned against it, her eyes squeezed shut. Through the window she could see Cole Coulter still standing there for a long moment before he finally turned and walked back toward town. Her hands were still shaking. Everything was shaking. She made her way to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water, but when she tried to drink it, she could not swallow past the tightness in her throat. The boarding house was quiet. Her only current guest, a traveling salesman named Mr. Dockery, was out making his rounds. Emma was grateful for the solitude. She sank into a chair at the kitchen table and let the trembling overtake her completely, her shoulders hunching as silent sobs racked through her body. She cried for longer than she meant to, cried until she had nothing left, and then she sat in the empty kitchen and tried to remember how to breathe normally. It was not the first time someone had grabbed her like that. The memory rose up unbidden, unwanted. 3 years ago, before she had come to redemption, when she was still living in Kansas City. The man who had courted her so carefully, who had seemed so charming and respectable. The night he had walked her home from a church social and tried to force his way into her room. The way his hands had clamped over her mouth, had torn at her dress. She had screamed and fought and somehow, by grace or luck or fury, had gotten the lamp from her bedside table and struck him hard enough to stagger him. Her landlady had heard the commotion and come running, and the man had fled. But the damage was done. Emma had not let anyone touch her since that night. Not a handshake, not a brush of fingers, not even a comforting pat on the shoulder. The very thought of it made her skin crawl and her heart race. She knew people in town thought her odd, standoffish, cold even. But it was the only way she could function, the only way she could move through the world without falling apart. And today, when that outlaw had grabbed her, it had all come rushing back with vicious clarity. Emma finally stood and went about preparing supper, needing the familiar routine to ground her. She made beef stew and cornbread, set the table for 2, and waited for Mr. Dockery to return. When he came in an hour later, full of talk about his sales, Emma listened with half an ear and served the meal with mechanical efficiency. He did not seem to notice anything amiss, and she was grateful for that too. That night, alone in her room, Emma stood at the window and looked out over Redemption. Lamplight glowed warm in windows along the street. Somewhere a piano played, tinny and distant. It was a nice enough town, better than some she had seen. She had thought she might build a real life here, something stable and safe. But today had shaken that foundation, had reminded her how fragile safety really was. She thought about James Coulter, about the way he had stepped back without question when she flinched, about the understanding in his eyes. She wondered who he was, where he had come from, and then told herself firmly that it did not matter. She was not in a position to wonder about any man, no matter how kind he seemed. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of spring day that made the mountains look close enough to touch. Emma was in the kitchen kneading bread dough when someone knocked at the front door. She wiped her hands on her apron and went to answer it, expecting perhaps a potential guest or one of the town ladies coming to gossip about yesterday's excitement. Instead, she found Cole Coulter standing on her porch, hat in hand. "Miss Hartwell," he said, nodding politely. "I hope I am not disturbing you. What can I do for you, Mr. Coulter?" Emma kept one hand on the door frame, ready to close it if necessary. "I wanted to check on you, make sure you were doing all right after yesterday, and I have another reason for coming by if you will hear me out." Emma hesitated, then stepped out onto the porch, leaving the door open behind her as a kind of escape route. "I am fine, thank you. What is your other reason?" "I am looking for a place to stay. I have been sleeping at the livery stable, but I plan to be in Redemption for a while and thought a proper room would suit better. I heard you run the best boarding house in town." "It is the only boarding house in town," Emma said, a hint of wry humor creeping into her voice despite herself. Cole's mouth quirked in a small smile. "Then I heard right. Would you have a room available?" Every practical instinct told Emma this was a bad idea. The last thing she needed was the man who had saved her life, the man who had seen her at her most vulnerable, living under her roof. But the boarding house had been struggling lately with only one guest, and she needed the income. She studied Cole Coulter carefully, trying to read him. He stood relaxed but not casual, patient, giving her all the time she needed to consider. "I have one room available," she finally said. "Upstairs at the end of the hall, $3 a week, includes breakfast and supper. I require payment in advance and I expect guests to be respectful and quiet." "That sounds more than fair. I can pay you for 2 weeks right now if that suits you." Emma named her terms about laundry and house rules while Cole listened attentively, then she led him inside and up the narrow staircase to the second floor. The room was simple but clean, with a bed, a washstand, a small dresser, and a chair by the window that looked out over the street. Cole set down the saddlebags he had been carrying and looked around with apparent satisfaction. "This will do just fine. Thank you, Miss Hartwell. Breakfast is at 7, supper at 6. If you need anything else, I will be downstairs." Emma retreated quickly, her heart beating faster than it should. Back in the kitchen, she tried to focus on her bread, but her mind kept drifting to the man now living in her house. She told herself it was just business, nothing more, but she could not shake the memory of how he had looked at her yesterday, like he saw past the walls she kept up, down to something true and raw beneath. Over the next few days, Emma learned that Cole Coulter was a quiet guest. He came to meals on time, thanked her politely for the food, and mostly kept to himself. She learned from Mr. Dockery, who loved to gossip, that Cole had come to Redemption tracking the gang that had robbed the bank, that he worked as a range detective for the Cattlemen's Association, hired to find rustlers and thieves. It was dangerous work, the kind that left a man scarred both inside and out. Emma watched him when she thought he was not looking. She noticed the way he always sat with his back to the wall, the way his eyes tracked movement even when he seemed relaxed. She noticed that his hands, though rough and calloused, moved with surprising gentleness when he reached for things. She noticed that he never tried to get close to her, always maintaining that careful distance. One morning, about a week after Cole had moved in, Emma was carrying a basket of laundry out to the line in the backyard when she stumbled on a loose board at the edge of the porch. The basket went flying, clean linens tumbling into the dirt, and Emma felt herself falling. She threw out her hands to catch herself, but before she hit the ground, strong arms caught her, steadying her. She froze completely, every muscle going rigid. Cole had her by the shoulders, had kept her from a nasty fall, but all Emma could feel was the grip of his hands, the closeness of his body. Panic rose in her throat like bile. Cole released her immediately, so fast it was almost as though she had burned him. He stepped back, putting several feet of distance between them in an instant. "I am sorry," he said quickly. "I did not think. Are you hurt?" Emma could not speak. Her heart was racing, her breath coming too fast. She pressed her hands against her chest, trying to calm down, trying to remember that this was not Kansas City, that this was not that man, that Cole had only been trying to help. "Miss Hartwell?" Cole's voice was worried, but he made no move toward her. "Emma." The sound of her given name, spoken with such concern, helped somehow. She managed to nod, managed to take a deeper breath. "I am all right, thank you for catching me, I just need a moment. Take all the time you need, I will pick up the laundry. You do not have to do that, I know. But I want to help." Cole was already gathering the scattered linens, shaking dirt from them carefully. Emma watched him, still trying to settle her racing heart. When he had collected everything back into the basket, he set it on the porch steps and turned to her. "I really am sorry for grabbing you like that, I should have realized. How could you have known to realize?" The words came out before Emma could stop them. "I have not exactly explained my reasons." Cole was quiet for a moment, studying her with those dark, perceptive eyes. "You do not owe me or anyone an explanation, but if you ever want to talk about it, I am willing to listen. No judgment, no expectations." Something in Emma's chest cracked a little at that. She had been carrying this weight for so long, holding it close and secret. The idea of setting it down, even for a moment, was both terrifying and tempting. "Why would you care?" she asked, not unkindly, just genuinely curious. "Because I recognize the look in your eyes," Cole said simply. "I have seen it before. Hell, I have felt it before. Different circumstances, maybe, but the same fear underneath, the same weight. What happened to you?" He hesitated, and Emma thought he might not answer, but then he did. "I spent some time in a prisoner of war camp during the war. I was just a kid, barely 18, but I saw things there. Had things done to me. When I got out, I could not stand being in small spaces, could not handle anyone coming up behind me without warning. It took years before I could walk into a room without scoping out every exit first. Still do it, actually. Some things stay with you." Emma felt something shift between them, an understanding settling into place. "I was attacked," she said quietly, 3 years ago. "A man I thought I could trust. He tried to force himself on me. I got away, but ever since then I cannot stand to be touched. Even the thought of it makes me feel like I am suffocating." Cole nodded slowly, as though this made perfect sense to him. "Thank you for telling me. I will make sure to give you space to not surprise you. And Emma, that man who hurt you was a coward and a villain. What happened was not your fault." Tears stung Emma's eyes, but she blinked them back. "Most days I believe that, some days I do not. I understand that too." Cole picked up the laundry basket and held it out to her, careful to keep distance between them. "For what it is worth, I think you are brave as hell. You survived something terrible and you kept going. You built a life for yourself. That takes strength." Emma took the basket, clutching it against her chest like a shield. "I do not feel very strong. The strongest people usually do not." Cole tipped his hat to her. "I will let you get back to your work. Thank you for listening." He headed back into the house, leaving Emma standing in the yard with her thoughts spinning. No one had ever talked to her like that before, with such plain-spoken honesty and understanding. She realized that for the first time in 3 years, she had told someone her story and the world had not ended. If anything, she felt lighter, as though sharing the burden had taken some of its weight. That evening at supper, there was a subtle shift in the dynamic. Mr. Dockery dominated the conversation as usual, but now and then Cole would catch Emma's eye across the table and share a small, knowing smile, like they had a secret. It was not romance, not yet, but it was connection, and that was something Emma had not allowed herself in a very long time. The days turned into weeks, and spring deepened into early summer. Cole continued his work tracking the remains of the outlaw gang, riding out most days and returning dusty and tired. Emma ran her boarding house, tended her small vegetable garden, and slowly, carefully, began to let her guard down around Cole Coulter. They fell into a pattern of talking in the evenings after supper, sitting on the front porch in rocking chairs with careful space between them, watching the sun set behind the mountains. Cole told her about growing up on a ranch in Texas, about losing his parents to fever when he was young, about the war and what came after. Emma told him about her childhood in St. Louis, about her aunt who had been more of a mother to her than her own absent parents, about the dreams she had of building something stable and lasting in redemption. They talked about books and music, about the changing seasons and the quirks of the town's residents. They talked about everything and nothing, and Emma found herself looking forward to those evenings more than she wanted to admit. One night in late June, as fireflies danced in the darkness beyond the porch, Cole said, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever think about trying again?" "Not with someone touching you, I mean, but just with being close to someone, trusting someone?" Emma was quiet for a long moment, considering. "Sometimes. It is hard to imagine, though. The fear is so much louder than the hope most days. What would you need to feel safe enough to try?" The question was gentle, but it pierced straight to the heart of Emma's loneliness. "I do not know," she admitted. "Patience, I suppose. Someone who would not push, who would let me set the pace. Someone who would understand that some days I might be fine and other days I might not be. Someone who would not make me feel broken for being the way I am." Cole rocked slowly in his chair, the wood creaking rhythmically. "You are not broken, Emma. You are just careful. There is a difference." "Do you really believe that?" "I do." He turned to look at her directly, his expression serious in the dim light. "I think you are one of the most whole people I have ever met. You know your limits, you protect yourself, you have survived. That is not broken. That is smart." Emma felt warmth bloom in her chest, a feeling she had almost forgotten. "Thank you for saying that. I am not just saying it, I mean it." Cole paused, seemed to gather himself. "I should tell you something. I have been thinking about it for a while now, and I figure you deserve honesty." Emma's heart started to beat faster. "What is it?" "I have feelings for you, Emma. Real ones. I did not come here looking for that, but it happened anyway. And I want you to know that I am not expecting anything from you, not asking you to change or to be anything other than exactly who you are. I just thought you should know the truth." The world seemed to hold its breath. Emma stared at Cole, saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the courage it had taken to say those words. Part of her wanted to run, to retreat behind her walls where it was safe. But a bigger part, a braver part, wanted to stay right where she was. "I have feelings for you too," she whispered. "It scares me." "I know. It scares me a little bit too, if I am being honest. I have not let myself care about anyone in a long time. It is easier to stay alone, stay moving. But something about you made me want to stop running." "What do we do now?" Emma asked, feeling lost and found all at once. Cole smiled, a real smile that softened his whole face. "We figure it out as we go. No pressure, no expectations. We just keep doing what we have been doing, talking, being honest with each other. And whenever you are ready for more, if you are ever ready, I will be here." Emma felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time they were not from fear or pain. "What if I am never ready?" "Then I will still be here. Caring about you is not conditional on what you can give me physically, Emma. I like who you are, how your mind works, the way you see the world. That is enough for me." The words settled into Emma's heart like a blessing. She had not known she needed to hear them until Cole spoke them aloud. "I do not know what I did to deserve you," she said softly. "You did not have to do anything, you just had to be yourself." Cole stood up from his rocking chair, stretched. "I am going to head to bed. Sleep well, Emma." "Good night, Cole." She watched him go inside, then sat on the porch for a long while after, looking up at the stars and thinking about possibility. For 3 years, she had believed that part of her life was over, that she would never be able to open her heart to anyone again. But here was a man who saw her fear and did not flinch, who offered patience instead of pressure, who made her want to be brave. The next morning, Emma made Cole's favorite breakfast of eggs and bacon with fresh biscuits. When he came down to the kitchen, she poured his coffee the way he liked it and set it at his usual place. Mr. Dockery had checked out the day before, heading to the next town on his sales route, so it was just the two of them at the table. "This looks wonderful," Cole said, settling into his chair. "Thank you." "I wanted to say something," Emma began, then paused to gather her courage. About last night, I have been thinking about what you said, and I want you to know that I would like to try, not anything physical, she added quickly, but I would like to try being close to someone. To you. In whatever way feels safe. Cole's face lit up, and Emma realized she had never seen him look truly happy until this moment. I would like that too, very much. I do not know what that looks like exactly. I might be terrible at this. Then we will be terrible at it together, and Emma. You do not have to have it all figured out right now. We will take it one day at a time. So they did. Over the following weeks, they explored what closeness could mean without touch. They went on walks together through town and into the foothills, always side by side but not quite touching. They sat closer together on the porch, close enough that Emma could feel the warmth radiating from Cole's body without actually making contact. They talked for hours, learning each other's histories and hopes in increasingly deeper detail. Cole told her about the nightmares he still had sometimes, about waking up sure he was back in that prisoner camp. Emma told him about the panic attacks that still caught her off guard, about how sometimes she had to hide in her room until the shaking stopped. They shared their broken pieces with each other, and somehow in the sharing, those pieces seemed to hurt a little less. One afternoon in July, the hottest day of the summer so far, Emma and Cole were sitting under the shade of the big cottonwood tree behind the boarding house. They had brought out glasses of lemonade and were enjoying the slight breeze that rustled through the leaves. Emma was telling a story about a disastrous attempt at baking a cake when she was younger, making Cole laugh in a way that lit up his whole face. So there was flour everywhere, and I mean everywhere, Emma said, grinning at the memory. In my hair, on the walls, somehow even on the ceiling. And my aunt came home and just stood there in the doorway with her mouth open, and all I could say was that I had wanted to surprise her. Did she punish you? She made me clean it all up, which took hours. But then she helped me make a proper cake, and we ate the whole thing together while she told me stories about the baking disasters she had when she was learning. She was good like that, my aunt. She understood that mistakes were just part of learning. Cole's expression turned thoughtful. She sounds like she was a wonderful woman. She was. I miss her every day. Emma took a sip of her lemonade, felt the tart sweetness on her tongue. She is the one who taught me that I was stronger than I thought. After what happened in Kansas City, I wrote to her, told her everything. She sent me money to come out here, told me I could have the boarding house and make a fresh start. She died 2 months after I arrived. Sometimes I think she was holding on just long enough to make sure I would be all right. I think she would be proud of who you have become. I hope so. Emma set down her glass and drew her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. Cole, can I ask you something? Always. How did you get past your fear, the nightmares and the panic? You seem so calm now, so steady. Cole considered the question carefully. I do not know that I got past it so much as I learned to live with it. I figured out my triggers, learned to manage them. I found work that gave me purpose. And I stopped trying to pretend I was fine when I was not. That last one was the hardest but also the most important. Once I let myself be honest about what I was feeling, things got easier. I have been pretending for so long, Emma admitted. Acting like I am fine, like I do not need anyone, like I am complete all on my own. But the truth is I am lonely. I have been lonely for 3 years. You do not have to be lonely anymore, not if you do not want to be. Emma looked at Cole, really looked at him. She saw the steadiness in his eyes, the patience in the set of his shoulders, the genuine care in his expression. She thought about all the conversations they had shared, all the ways he had shown her respect and understanding without asking for anything in return. And she realized that somewhere along the way, without her quite noticing, Cole Coulter had become the most important person in her life. I am scared, she whispered. I know, that is all right. I am scared of being touched. The words came out raw and honest, the fear behind them laid bare. Cole held her gaze, did not look away or minimize what she had said. Then I will wait until you are ready, however long that takes. Emma felt something break open inside her chest, something that had been locked tight for so long she had forgotten it was there. It was not quite hope and not quite joy, but something in between, something fragile and precious. What if I am never ready? Then I will wait forever. Emma, I meant what I said before. My feelings for you are not conditional. I care about you, all of you, exactly as you are. If we never progress beyond this, beyond talking and walking and sitting together, that is enough. You are enough. Tears slid down Emma's cheeks, hot in the summer heat. No one has ever said anything like that to me before. Then they were fools. Cole's voice was fierce with conviction. You are worth waiting for. You are worth anything. They sat together under the cottonwood tree until the sun began to sink toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. They did not touch, but the space between them felt charged with possibility, with the beginning of something that might, given time and patience, grow into something beautiful. That evening, after supper, Emma found herself standing at the bottom of the stairs, looking up toward where Cole's room was. She thought about going up, about knocking on his door, about trying to push past her fear through sheer force of will. But she knew that was not the way. Healing did not happen all at once. It happened in small steps, in moments of bravery scattered across ordinary days. Instead, she went to her own room and wrote in the journal she had been keeping since coming to redemption. She wrote about Cole, about the things he had said, about the way he made her feel seen and valued. She wrote about her fear and her hope, about the possibility of a future that did not involve being alone. And when she finally blew out her lamp and lay down to sleep, she felt more at peace than she had in years. The summer wore on. Cole continued his work, and bit by bit, he and Sheriff Mason managed to track down the remaining members of the outlaw gang. It was dangerous work, and more than once Cole came home with new bruises or a fresh cut that Emma would fuss over from a careful distance. She hated seeing him hurt, but she understood that this was part of who he was, part of the purpose that kept him steady. One night in August, Cole returned to the boarding house well after dark, moving stiffly and favoring his left side. Emma heard him come in from where she was sitting in the parlor, mending one of his shirts by lamplight. She set down her sewing and went to the doorway. "Are you hurt?" she asked, keeping her voice level even though worry twisted in her stomach. "Nothing serious. Just took a fall chasing down the last of the gang. Got a few bruises, but I will be fine." "Have you eaten?" "Not yet. Sit down, I will bring you something." Emma went to the kitchen and heated up leftover stew, sliced some bread, and arranged it all on a tray. When she brought it out to the parlor, Cole was sitting in one of the armchairs, his head tipped back and his eyes closed. In the lamplight, she could see the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Her heart clenched with something too big to name. "Here," she said softly, setting the tray on the small table beside him. Cole opened his eyes and smiled at her, that gentle smile that always made her feel warm inside. "You do not have to take care of me, Emma. I know I want to." She settled into the chair across from him, picking her sewing back up. "It is your shirt, actually, the blue one. You tore the sleeve somehow." "I am hard on my clothes," Cole admitted, reaching for the bowl of stew. "Thank you for this, and for mending that. You are always doing thoughtful things like that. You are always doing thoughtful things too. It goes both ways." They sat together in comfortable silence while Cole ate. Emma focused on her stitches, small and neat, repairing the torn fabric. She thought about how this felt, this quiet domesticity, and realized it was something she wanted more of, not just for now, but for always. "Cole," she said, not looking up from her sewing, "what happens when you finish tracking the gang? Will you move on to the next job?" There was a long pause. "I have been thinking about that," Cole finally said. "The thing is, I do not want to move on. I like redemption. I like this boarding house. I like sitting here with you in the evenings, mending my shirts." He set down his empty bowl. "I have been thinking about buying some land just outside town, maybe raising horses. I am tired of chasing outlaws, Emma. I want to build something instead of just tearing things down." Emma's hands stilled on the fabric. "You would stay, if you want me to. I know we have not talked about the future much, have not made any promises, but I am laying my cards on the table here. I want to stay in redemption. I want to see where this thing between us can go. And even if you do not feel the same way, even if you would rather I left, I want you to know that these past few months with you have been the best of my life." Emma set down her sewing with trembling hands. "I do not want you to leave. The thought of you leaving makes my chest hurt. I want you to stay, Cole. I want you to buy that land and raise horses and come home to this boarding house every evening. I want all of that." Cole leaned forward in his chair, his eyes intense on hers. "Emma Hartwell, I am in love with you. I know it might be too soon to say it, but it is the truth. I love your strength and your kindness and your careful way of moving through the world. I love how you laugh at my bad jokes and how you make the best biscuits I have ever tasted. I love everything about you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you." Emma's breath caught in her throat. Her heart was racing, but this time it was not from fear. "I love you too," she whispered. "I did not think I could love anyone again, but I love you, Cole. You make me want to be brave. You are already brave. You have always been brave." Emma stood up on shaking legs, took one step toward Cole, then another. He watched her carefully but did not move, did not reach for her, just let her come to him at her own pace. She stopped when she was standing directly in front of his chair, close enough that her skirt brushed against his knees. Her whole body was trembling, but she forced herself to stay still, to not run. "I want to try something," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I need you to stay very still. Can you do that?" "Of course." Cole's hands were resting on the arms of the chair, and Emma could see him deliberately keeping them there, giving her complete control of the situation. Moving slowly, Emma reached out with one hand. Her fingers hovered in the air between them, shaking visibly. Every instinct screamed at her to pull back, to retreat to safety. But she thought about all the evenings they had spent together, all the ways Cole had shown her patience and understanding, all the reasons she loved him. She thought about the future she wanted, the life she could have if she was brave enough to reach for it. Her fingers touched Cole's cheek, feather light, barely there. The world did not end. The panic did not consume her. Instead, Emma felt the warmth of Cole's skin, the slight stubble along his jaw, the realness of him. She let her hand rest there for a moment, adjusting to the sensation, then slowly pulled back. "I did it," she breathed, staring at her own hand in wonder. Cole's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You did. I am so proud of you, Emma. It was not as bad as I thought it would be. I mean, my heart is racing and I feel a little dizzy, but I did not fall apart. I touched you and I am still standing." "You are still standing," Cole agreed softly. "And I am right here whenever you want to try again. No rush, no pressure." Emma nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. The adrenaline was starting to fade, leaving her shaky but also exhilarated. She had done something she had thought impossible. It was just one small touch, just a moment, but it felt like the beginning of everything. "I think I need to sit down now," she admitted. "Take all the time you need." Emma sank back into her chair, her legs suddenly too weak to hold her. Cole watched her with concern and pride mixed in equal measure. They sat together in the lamplight, and Emma felt something shift between them, some invisible barrier crumbling away. It was not gone completely, might never be completely gone, but it was less solid than it had been before. "Thank you for letting me try that," she said. "Thank you for trusting me enough to try." The next few weeks were a study in patience and small victories. Emma found herself pushing her boundaries bit by bit, testing the limits of what she could handle. Sometimes she could sit next to Cole on the porch, their shoulders almost but not quite touching. Other times even that much closeness felt like too much and she needed space. Cole never complained, never pushed. He simply followed her lead, present and steady and patient. In early September, Cole closed the deal on 50 acres of land just west of town, good grazing land with a creek running through it, and a view of the mountains that took Emma's breath away when he showed it to her. They stood together looking out over the rolling grassland, and Emma could almost see the future taking shape before her eyes. The house Cole would build, the horses in their pasture, the life they might make together. "What do you think?" Cole asked. "I think it is perfect." I think you are going to build something wonderful here. I am going to need help, you know. I am decent enough with horses, but I do not know the first thing about running a proper ranch. I was hoping maybe you might consider being my partner in this. Not just in this, he gestured at the land, but in everything. Emma turned to look at him, her heart in her throat. Cole Coulter, are you asking me to marry you? Not yet. I figure that is a conversation we should have when you are ready for it, and I do not want to rush you. But I am asking if you can see a future with me, Emma. A real one, with partnership and commitment and all the messy, wonderful things that come with building a life together. I can see it, Emma said softly. Sometimes it scares me how clearly I can see it. But yes, I can imagine a future with you. I want a future with you. Cole's whole face brightened. Then that is enough for now. We will figure out the details as we go. They walked back to town as the sun set, talking about Cole's plans for the ranch, about where he might build the house and how many horses he might start with. Emma found herself adding her own ideas, painting the picture with him, and realized that this was what partnership felt like. Not one person leading and the other following, but both of them walking side by side, building something together. That night after supper, Emma asked Cole if he would sit with her on the porch. The air had a hint of autumn chill to it, the first whisper of the changing season. Emma had brought out a shawl and wrapped it around her shoulders. They sat in their usual rocking chairs, looking out at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. I have been thinking, Emma said. About what comes next, about the things I want. Tell me. I want to keep running the boarding house, at least for now. I like having my own work, my own purpose. But I also want to help you with the ranch, to be a real partner in that. I want us to build something together, Cole, something that is ours. I want that too, more than anything. Emma took a deep breath, gathering her courage. And I want to work on the touching thing. I want to be able to hold your hand, to hug you, to eventually be close to you in all the ways that married people are close. I do not know how long it will take, and I cannot promise I will get there quickly, but I want to try. Cole stopped rocking and turned to face her fully. Emma, listen to me carefully. I need you to know that I will never, ever pressure you about that. If it happens, wonderful. If it does not, I will still love you just as much. Do you understand? I do. But I need you to understand something too. This is not about you pressuring me. This is about me wanting more for my own life. I am tired of letting that man from Kansas City have power over me. I am tired of living in fear. I want to reclaim my body, my choices, my future. And I want to do that with you. Cole's eyes were suspiciously bright in the dim light. You are the bravest person I have ever met. I do not feel brave, I feel terrified. That is what bravery is, Emma. Doing the thing that terrifies you because it matters more than the fear. They rocked in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Then Emma stood up and walked over to where Cole was sitting. She held out her hand to him, palm up, an invitation. Cole stared at it for a moment, then slowly, carefully placed his hand in hers. The touch sent a jolt through Emma, part fear and part something else, something warmer. She focused on her breathing, on the feeling of Cole's calloused palm against hers, on the way his fingers curled gently around her hand. It was not completely comfortable, her instincts still screaming at her to pull away, but it was bearable. More than bearable, it was nice in its own way. Is this all right? Cole asked softly. Yes, it is all right. They stood like that for several long minutes, hands clasped, until Emma felt her heartbeat slow to something approaching normal. When she finally let go, it was not because she had to, but because she chose to, and that felt like a victory all its own. Thank you, she said, always. The days grew shorter and cooler as autumn settled over Colorado. Cole spent his days working on the ranch, clearing land and beginning the frame of a house, while Emma ran the boarding house and slowly adjusted to having other guests again as the fall travelers started coming through town. But no matter how busy they were, Cole and Emma always made time for each other in the evenings. They practiced touching in small, manageable increments. Holding hands became easier, then sitting close together, then Emma resting her hand on Cole's arm or shoulder for brief moments. Each touch was a negotiation, a careful balance between Emma's fear and her desire to move forward. Some days were harder than others. Once, when Emma tried to let Cole put his arm around her shoulders, the panic rose so fast and fierce that she had to excuse herself and go breathe into her hands in the kitchen until the shaking stopped. Cole found her there, standing with her back against the counter, tears streaming down her face. He did not try to approach her, just stood in the doorway with his hands visible and his expression gentle. "I am sorry," Emma gasped out. "I thought I could do it, but then I just could not breathe and everything was too much." "You have nothing to apologize for. Healing is not a straight line, Emma. There will be good days and hard days. I hate this. I hate being broken like this." "You are not broken," Cole's voice was firm. "You are healing. There is a difference. I want to be normal. I want to be able to be close to you without falling apart. You are close to me. Right now, in this moment, you are close to me in all the ways that matter. The physical stuff will come when it comes, or it will not. Either way, I am not going anywhere." Emma wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "How are you always so patient? Because you are worth being patient for. Because I love you. Because I understand what it is like to carry trauma and I know it cannot be rushed or forced." Emma took several deep breaths, felt her heartbeat gradually slow. "Can we just sit together for a while, not touching, just being in the same room? We can do whatever you need." They went to the parlor and sat in comfortable silence, Cole reading a book and Emma working on her mending. Just being near him, knowing he was there and steady and not angry with her for her limitations, helped settle something in Emma's chest. She realized that this was love too, this quiet companionship, this acceptance. Maybe she had been defining love too narrowly all along. October brought crisp mornings and brilliant foliage in the aspen groves. Cole finished the basic structure of his house on the ranch, and Emma went out to see it one Sunday afternoon. It was a simple design, just 4 rooms, but solid and well-built. Cole walked her through it, pointing out where each room would be, his voice full of pride and hope. "The bedroom will be here," he said, standing in what would eventually be the back room. "With a window facing the mountains so you can see them first thing when you wake up. I remember you mentioning once that you loved the way the morning light hits the peaks." Emma's throat tightened with emotion. "You remembered that?" "I remember everything you tell me." Cole turned to face her. "I want this house to be a place where you feel safe, Emma. Where we can build a life together. So if there is anything you want, any way I can design it to make you more comfortable, I want to know. It is perfect just as it is, because you are building it for us." Cole smiled, that soft smile that transformed his whole face. "Come spring, it should be ready to move into. I was thinking maybe by then, if you felt ready, we could talk about setting a date. For the wedding, I mean." Emma's heart skipped. They had talked around the idea of marriage many times, but this was the first time Cole had put a specific time frame to it. "Spring," she repeated, testing the word. "That gives me a few months to keep working on things, to keep getting more comfortable with touch. It gives us a few months to be together, to keep building what we have. The touch stuff will work itself out or it will not, but either way, I want to marry you, Emma Hartwell. I want to stand up in front of the whole town and promise to love you and partner with you for the rest of my life." Emma felt tears sting her eyes, but they were good tears this time. "I want that too. Yes, let us plan for spring. Maybe April, when everything is new and growing. April sounds perfect." They sealed the promise not with a kiss, but with Emma taking both of Cole's hands in hers and holding them for a long moment, looking directly into his eyes. It was the most intimate they had been, standing there in the skeleton of their future home, hands clasped and hearts open. Emma felt fear, yes, but she also felt hope and love and the thrilling possibility of a future she had thought was lost to her forever. The winter came on hard and cold, snow blanketing redemption in white. The boarding house stayed busy with travelers who got stuck waiting for the mountain passes to clear. Emma worked long hours cooking and cleaning and managing her guests, but no matter how tired she was, she always made time for Cole. They spent Christmas together, just the two of them after Emma's other guests had gone to bed. They sat by the fire in the parlor, drinking hot cider and exchanging simple gifts. Emma had knitted Cole a warm scarf, and he had made her a beautiful jewelry box from wood he had cut on his land, sanded and polished until it gleamed. Inside was a delicate silver ring with a small turquoise stone. "It is not the engagement ring," Cole explained. "That will come later when we make things official. But I wanted you to have something to remind you of my promise, that I am here, that I am not going anywhere, that I am committed to you and to us." Emma slipped the ring onto her right hand, admiring how the turquoise caught the firelight. "It is beautiful, I will treasure it. You are beautiful, and I am the luckiest man in Colorado." Emma surprised herself by leaning over and kissing Cole's cheek, quick and light but deliberate. She pulled back immediately, her heart racing, but she was smiling. "Merry Christmas, Cole." He touched his cheek where her lips had been, his expression one of wonder. "Merry Christmas, Emma." It was a small thing, just a brief kiss on the cheek, but it felt monumental. Emma had initiated it, had chosen to touch him in that way, and the world had not ended. If anything, she felt powerful, like she was taking back control of her own life and body bit by bit. As winter deepened, Emma found herself getting more comfortable with physical contact. She could hold Cole's hand now without her heart racing. She could sit pressed against his side on the porch when they bundled up to watch the snow fall. She could rest her head on his shoulder for brief moments. It was all still negotiated, still careful, but it was progress. One evening in February, they were sitting together by the fire when Cole said, "I have been thinking about something." "What is it?" "I think maybe it would help if you had some control in how we touched. Like, what if you initiated everything? That way you would always know what was coming, would always be the one making the choice. Would that make you feel safer?" Emma considered this. "I think it might. I think a lot of my fear comes from feeling like things are being done to me, like I do not have a say. If I was the one initiating, that would be different. Then that is what we will do. I will not reach for you or touch you unless you explicitly say it is all right. You lead, I follow. Always." "That is a lot of self-control to ask of you," Cole shrugged. "I have got plenty of practice at self-control. And honestly, Emma, seeing you take charge of your own healing, watching you get braver little by little, that matters more to me than any physical contact. I am playing the long game here." "I love you so much," Emma said, the words spilling out without thought. "I do not think I tell you that enough. I love you, Cole Coulter. I love your patience and your strength and the way you understand me even when I do not understand myself. I love you too. More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone." As winter gave way to early spring, Emma and Cole finalized their wedding plans. It would be a small ceremony at the little church in town, just close friends and neighbors. Emma would wear the dress that had been her aunt's, carefully preserved and altered to fit. Cole would wear a new suit he had ordered from the catalog. They would exchange vows and rings, and then there would be a simple celebration at the boarding house with food and music and dancing. Emma found herself both excited and terrified as the date approached. The wedding itself did not scare her. It was the wedding night that loomed large in her mind. She and Cole had not talked much about expectations for that, had carefully skirted around the subject, but Emma knew it was coming. She knew that at some point they would be expected to consummate their marriage, and the thought made her stomach twist with anxiety. About a week before the wedding, Emma finally gathered the courage to bring it up. They were sitting on the porch of the new house, which was nearly finished now, complete with furniture Cole had built and curtains Emma had sewn. The evening was mild, the first real warmth after the long winter, and birds sang in the cottonwoods down by the creek. "Cole, we need to talk about the wedding night," Emma said abruptly, the words coming out more blunt than she intended. Cole set down the piece of wood he had been whittling and gave her his full attention. "All right, what is on your mind? I am worried. I want to be close to you that way, I really do, but I do not know if I can." and I do not want you to be disappointed or frustrated or to feel like you made a mistake marrying me. Emma, look at me. Cole waited until she met his eyes. There is no timeline on intimacy. Our wedding night does not have to be anything more than us sleeping in the same room if that is all you are comfortable with. We have the rest of our lives to figure this out. But it is not fair to you. You are a man, you have needs. I am a man who loves you and respects you. That is my primary need. Yes, I would love to be physically intimate with you eventually, but only when you are truly ready, when you want it as much as I do. Anything less than that would not feel right to me. Emma twisted the turquoise ring on her finger. What if I am never ready? What if this fear never goes away completely? Then we will figure out a different kind of marriage. Emma, I need you to hear this. I did not fall in love with you because of what I thought you could give me physically. I fell in love with your mind, your strength, your kindness, your laugh. I fell in love with the way you made me want to stay in one place and build something lasting. I fell in love with you, all of you, exactly as you are. If physical intimacy is part of our marriage, wonderful. If it is not, I will still count myself the luckiest man alive to call you my wife. Tears were streaming down Emma's face now. How are you real? How did I get so lucky as to find you? I ask myself the same question every day. Cole smiled gently. Here is what I propose for the wedding night. We get married, we have our celebration, and then we go to our new house together. We put on our night clothes in separate rooms, we get into bed, and we talk or read or just sleep. No expectations, no pressure. We wake up the next morning as husband and wife, and we take each day as it comes. Does that sound all right to you? That sounds more than all right. That sounds like heaven. Then that is what we will do. The wedding day arrived with clear skies and warm sunshine, the mountains standing sharp against the blue horizon. Emma woke early in her room at the boarding house, her stomach full of butterflies. She had closed the boarding house to guests for the week, wanting time and space to focus on this enormous step she was taking. Her friend Mary from the general store came over to help her get ready, doing up all the tiny buttons on the back of the wedding dress and arranging Emma's hair in a simple but elegant style. Emma looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. She looked happy, truly happy for the first time in years. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. Cole stood at the front of the church in his new suit, his eyes never leaving Emma's face as she walked down the aisle alone, her head held high. When she reached him, he whispered, "You are breathtaking," and Emma felt her heart swell with love. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising partnership and patience, love and loyalty, understanding and acceptance. When it came time for the rings, Cole slid a simple gold band next to the turquoise ring Emma still wore, and she placed a matching band on his finger. The preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and then Cole looked at Emma with a question in his eyes. Emma nodded, giving permission, and Cole leaned down to kiss her. It was brief and chaste, just a brush of lips, but it was the first time Emma had let any man kiss her mouth since that night in Kansas City, and it felt like victory and hope all rolled into one. The celebration at the boarding house was lively and warm. The whole town seemed to have turned out to wish them well. There was food and music, and Emma even managed to dance with Cole, letting him guide her through a simple waltz with his hands carefully placed where she had indicated was acceptable. She laughed more that day than she could remember laughing in years. As the sun began to set and the guests started to leave, Cole helped Emma into the wagon he had brought to take them out to the ranch. Their ranch now, she reminded herself. Their home. The ride was quiet, both of them tired but content. When they arrived at the house, Cole helped Emma down from the wagon and they stood together for a moment, looking at their new home bathed in the golden light of dusk. "Are you ready?" Cole asked. "I am ready." They went inside, and true to his word, Cole showed Emma to the bedroom and then excused himself to change in the other room. Emma put on her nightgown, brushed out her hair, and climbed into the big bed that Cole had built. Her heart was beating fast, but not from fear, from anticipation and excitement about the future stretching out before them. Cole came in wearing his nightshirt, his hair damp from washing up. He got into bed on his side, leaving careful space between them. For a while they just lay there, talking about the day, about how beautiful the ceremony had been, about the funny things various guests had said. Then Emma, feeling brave and safe and deeply loved, scooted across the space separating them. She moved slowly, giving herself time to adjust until she was lying with her head on Cole's shoulder, his arm carefully around her. "Is this all right?" she whispered. "This is perfect," Cole replied, his voice rough with emotion. "You are perfect." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, and when Emma woke in the night from an old nightmare, Cole was right there, murmuring comfort without moving or grabbing her, just being steady and present until she calmed again. She realized that this was intimacy too, this trust, this safety, this knowing someone would be there in the dark moments. The weeks turned into months, spring into summer. Emma and Cole settled into married life with an ease that surprised them both. They worked together on the ranch, Emma helping with the horses while Cole slowly built up his herd. She still ran the boarding house, riding into town 3 days a week to manage things, while Cole handled the ranch. Their physical relationship progressed slowly but surely. Emma found that she could initiate more and more without panic overwhelming her. She kissed Cole often now, sometimes brief pecks and sometimes longer, deeper kisses that left her breathless for good reasons. She could hug him, could curl up against him on the porch in the evenings, could even sit in his lap sometimes when she was feeling particularly brave. One warm night in June, lying in bed with Cole's arms around her, Emma said, "I think I am ready." Cole had been half asleep, but he came fully awake at that. Ready for what? For more, for all of it, for being close to you in every way. Cole pulled back just enough to look at her face in the moonlight streaming through the window. "Are you sure? There is no rush, Emma. I am sure. I trust you, I love you, and I want this, Cole. I want to be your wife in every sense of the word." "Then I will follow your lead. You tell me what you need, what feels good, what is too much. We stop the moment you want to stop. Promise me you will speak up." "I promise." What followed was tender and gentle and occasionally awkward as they figured out how to be together in this new way. Emma had moments of panic that Cole helped her breathe through, times when she needed to pause and regroup. But there were also moments of genuine pleasure and connection, of feeling truly close to another person in a way she had thought was lost to her forever. When it was over, Emma lay in Cole's arms and cried, but this time the tears were from relief and joy and gratitude. "Thank you for waiting," she whispered. "Thank you for being patient. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for being brave." They held each other as the moon tracked across the sky, and Emma felt something fundamental shift inside her. The fear was not gone completely, might never be completely gone, but it no longer ruled her life. She had faced it, had moved through it with Cole's steady presence beside her, and had come out the other side into something beautiful. The summer was full and rich. Emma discovered she was pregnant in August, and the news filled them both with joy and a little bit of terror. They spent long evenings talking about what kind of parents they wanted to be, about the values they wanted to instill, about how to raise a child in this wild, beautiful place they had made their home. Cole was attentive throughout Emma's pregnancy, always conscious of her physical comfort, always asking before touching her growing belly. Emma found that her fear of being touched had diminished significantly. There were still moments when she needed space, still days when her old trauma echoed through her, but they were fewer and farther between. She had learned that healing was not about the fear disappearing entirely. It was about learning to live with it, to not let it control every decision. Their daughter was born on a cold February morning in 1879, delivered by Doc Pritchard with Cole holding Emma's hand through every contraction. They named her Catherine Rose, after Emma's aunt. From the moment Emma held that tiny, perfect baby in her arms, she felt a love so fierce it almost frightened her. She looked at Cole, saw the same overwhelming love reflected in his face, and knew that they had created something miraculous. Raising Catherine was both challenging and wonderful. Emma learned to navigate motherhood with Cole as her partner, the two of them figuring out parenting together just as they had figured out everything else. They made mistakes and learned from them. They supported each other through the sleepless nights and the teething and all the thousand small crises that come with a baby. The boarding house continued to operate, though Emma hired help now so she did not have to be in town quite as often. The ranch thrived, Cole's horse breeding operation gaining a reputation throughout Colorado. They built a good life, a full life, surrounded by friends and neighbors who had become like family. On their second anniversary, they stood together on the porch of their house, watching Catherine toddle around the yard chasing butterflies. Emma leaned into Cole's side, his arm comfortable and welcome around her waist. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Emma asked. "If you had not been there that day in town, if you had not saved me?" "I try not to think about that. It hurts too much to imagine a world where I did not meet you. I think about it sometimes. I think about how lost I was, how certain I was that I would never be able to trust anyone again, never be able to love anyone. And then you came along and changed everything." Cole kissed the top of her head. "You changed everything for me too. Before you, I was just drifting, moving from job to job with no real purpose. You gave me a reason to stay, a reason to build something lasting." "We gave each other reasons," Emma corrected. "That is what partnership is it not? Two people making each other braver, stronger, better than they were alone." "I love you, Emma Coulter. I love you too, more than I ever thought possible." Catherine squealed with delight as she caught a butterfly in her chubby hands, then opened them to let it fly free. Emma and Cole laughed together, watching their daughter discover the world, and Emma felt a profound sense of gratitude for this life they had built together from patience and understanding and love. The years continued to unfold in a pattern of seasons and milestones. Catherine grew into a bright, curious child with Emma's determination and Cole's steady temperament. When she was 3, Emma became pregnant again, and this time they welcomed a son they named James after Cole's father, though everyone called him Jamie. 2 years later, another daughter arrived, Sarah, with wild, dark curls and a laugh that could light up a room. Emma sometimes thought about that day in redemption when her life had changed, when violence and fear had threatened to consume her completely. She thought about how close she had come to letting that fear win, to spending the rest of her life closed off and alone. And then she would look at Cole, at the beautiful children they had created together, at the life they had built, and she would marvel at how much healing was possible when you found the right person to walk beside you through the darkness. Cole still had nightmares sometimes about the war, about the prisoner camp. Emma still had days when being touched felt like too much, when she needed space and solitude to settle herself. But they had learned to navigate each other's wounds with grace and patience, to offer comfort without judgment, to be present without being overwhelming. One evening, when Catherine was 10, Jamie 7, and Sarah 5, the family gathered around the dinner table at the ranch house. It was a noisy, chaotic meal full of spilled milk and laughter and arguments over who got the last piece of cornbread. After the children had been sent to wash up for bed, Emma and Cole sat together at the table, finishing their coffee. "I have been thinking about something," Cole said. "What is that? Do you remember that first conversation we had on your porch? When I told you I had feelings for you and you said you were scared," Emma smiled. "I remember. I was terrified. I had no idea how to be close to anyone, no idea if I would ever be able to let someone in again. I remember telling you I would wait, that I would wait forever if that is what it took." Cole reached across the table and took her hand, the gesture so familiar now after years of marriage. "I just want you to know that it was worth it. Every moment of waiting, every careful step, every time we had to pause and regroup. It was all worth it to be here now, to have this life with you." Emma felt tears prick her eyes, the good kind that came from being deeply moved. It was worth it for me too. You gave me back something I thought was lost forever, Cole. You gave me back the ability to trust, to love, to believe in the possibility of happiness. You gave me this family, this beautiful life. I cannot imagine what I did to deserve you, but I thank God every day that you walked into my life when you did. You did not have to do anything to deserve me, Emma. You just had to be yourself. That was always enough. They sat together in the quiet of the evening, hands joined across the table, listening to the sounds of their children getting ready for bed upstairs. This was happiness, Emma thought. Not the absence of fear or pain or struggle, but the presence of love and partnership and commitment. This was what healing looked like, what it felt like to rebuild a life from broken pieces. Later that night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Emma and Cole lay in bed together, wrapped in each other's arms as they had been countless times before. The moon was bright outside the window, painting everything in silver light. Emma thought about all the nights she had spent alone and frightened before Cole when she thought this kind of closeness was impossible for someone like her. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Cole's voice was sleepy content, for waiting, for being patient, for loving me through all of it. "You do not have to thank me for that. Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done." Emma smiled against his shoulder. "Still, I want you to know that I see what you did for me, what you continue to do every day. You gave me the space and time I needed to heal, and that is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. You gave me a gift too, Emma. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You taught me that staying in one place and building something lasting is braver than constantly moving on. You showed me what real love looks like." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, safe and warm and loved. And outside, the Colorado wind whispered through the cottonwoods, carrying with it the promise of all the tomorrows yet to come, all the years they would spend together building and growing and loving each other through whatever life brought their way. The ranch continued to prosper. Cole's reputation as a horse breeder grew, and people came from all over Colorado and beyond to buy his animals. Emma eventually sold the boarding house in town, deciding she wanted to focus her energy on the ranch and her family. She started a small garden business, selling vegetables and herbs to the restaurants and families in Redemption, finding satisfaction in growing things, in nurturing life. Catherine grew up with a deep love of horses, spending hours in the stables with her father, learning everything he could teach her. Jamie was quieter, more bookish, showing a talent for numbers and business that would eventually serve the ranch well. Sarah was the wild one, always climbing trees and catching frogs and coming home covered in mud with a grin on her face. They were each so different, but Emma and Cole loved them fiercely, individually, supporting each of them in becoming whoever they were meant to be. One spring day, when Emma was in her mid-30s and the children were all old enough to handle themselves for an afternoon, Cole suggested they take a ride up into the mountains, just the two of them. They packed a simple lunch, saddled two of their gentlest horses, and set out into the wilderness beyond the ranch. They rode for several hours, climbing higher into the foothills, following a trail that Cole had scouted out years ago. Finally, they emerged into a high meadow filled with wildflowers, the mountains rising up all around them and the valley spread out below like a patchwork quilt. It was breathtakingly beautiful. They dismounted and spread a blanket on the grass, ate their lunch while watching hawks circle overhead. After they had finished eating, they lay back on the blanket, looking up at the impossibly blue sky, their fingers intertwined between them. "You ever think about how our story might sound to someone else?" Emma asked. "The woman who was afraid to be touched and the cowboy who promised to wait." Cole chuckled. "I suppose it might sound like something from one of those dime novels, too perfect to be real. But it is real. We made it real through patience and stubbornness and love. Mostly love, I think." Emma rolled onto her side, propping herself up on one elbow to look down at Cole. "I want you to know something. I want you to know that you saved me, Cole Coulter. Not just that day in town when you shot that outlaw, but every day since then. You saved me from a life of fear and isolation. You saved me from believing I was too broken to be loved." Cole reached up and cupped her face gently in his hand, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "You saved yourself, Emma. I just held space for you while you did the work. But I am honored that I got to be part of your healing, that I got to witness you becoming strong enough to reclaim your own life." "We saved each other then. Yes, I think that is closer to the truth." Emma leaned down and kissed him, slow and deep and full of all the love and gratitude she felt. When they finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his and whispered, "I would choose you every time. In every lifetime, in every version of this story, I would choose you. And I would wait for you every time, however long it took." They stayed in the high meadow until the sun began to sink toward the western peaks, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Then they packed up their things, mounted their horses, and rode back down toward home, toward the life they had built together, toward the children who were waiting for them. As they crested the last rise before the ranch came into view, Emma paused her horse and looked out over everything they had created. The house with smoke curling from its chimney, the barn and corrals with their horses grazing peacefully, the vegetable gardens laid out in neat rows, the creek winding through it all like a silver ribbon. This was home. This was safety. This was love made tangible. "Thank you," she said again, because some things could never be said enough. Cole brought his horse alongside hers and reached out to take her hand. "Thank you for letting me love you. Thank you for trusting me with your heart. Thank you for building this life with me." They rode the last distance home together, hand in hand, the setting sun warm on their backs and the future stretching bright before them. And Emma thought about that terrified woman she had been, standing in the street in redemption with her whole body shaking, certain she would never feel safe again. She thought about how impossible this happiness had seemed then, how sure she was that her life was effectively over at 25. But she had been wrong. Her life had not ended that day. In many ways, it had just been beginning. Because sometimes, if you are very lucky, you find someone who sees past the fear to the person underneath. Someone who offers patience instead of pressure, understanding instead of judgment. Someone who says, "I will wait," and means it with every fiber of their being. Emma had found that someone in Cole Coulter, and in finding him, she had found herself again. Not the same person she had been before trauma touched her life, but someone new, someone stronger, someone who understood that healing is not about going back to who you were, but about moving forward to who you are becoming. The children came running when they saw Emma and Cole riding in, full of stories about their day and questions about the ride. Emma dismounted and gathered them close, Sarah on her hip and Jamie hanging on her arm while Catherine helped Cole with the horses. She looked at her family, at this beautiful, noisy, imperfect, perfect life, and felt gratitude so profound it almost hurt. That night, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Emma and Cole sat on their porch as they had countless times before. The stars were out, brilliant and infinite, and somewhere in the darkness, a coyote called to its mate. Emma was nestled against Cole's side, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting in the hollow where his shoulder met his chest. It was her favorite place in the world. "Do you know what I was thinking about today?" Emma asked. "Tell me." "I was thinking about how love is not always big, dramatic gestures. Sometimes it is just choosing to be patient, choosing to wait, choosing to believe in someone even when they are struggling to believe in themselves. That is the truest thing I have heard in a long time. You chose that for me, Cole. Every single day you choose patience and understanding and love. You make me feel like I am worth waiting for. You are worth waiting for, you always have been." They rocked gently, the chairs creaking in rhythm with each other. Emma thought about all the conversations they had shared on this porch, all the small and large moments that had brought them to where they were now. She thought about the fear she had faced and the courage it had taken to keep choosing love even when it terrified her. She thought about the children sleeping upstairs, the products of that courage and love. And she thought about the years still ahead of them, all the adventures and challenges and joys that awaited. "I love you, Cole Coulter," she said softly. "Today and tomorrow and every day after that. I love you too, Emma, to the end of my days and beyond." They stayed on the porch until the moon rose high above the mountains, flooding the valley with silver light. Inside the house, their children dreamed their child dreams. In the barn, the horses settled in for the night. The creek burbled endlessly past, marking time in its ancient way. And Emma and Cole sat together in the peaceful darkness, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built something beautiful from broken pieces, who had proven that love and patience could heal even the deepest wounds. This was their story, Emma thought. Not perfect, not always easy, but real and true, and worth everything it had taken to build. And as she sat there wrapped in Cole's arms, listening to the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear, she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, with exactly the person she was meant to be with. The fear that had once ruled her life was still there sometimes, lurking in the corners, but it no longer had the power to control her. She had faced it, had walked through it, had come out the other side into this beautiful, full life. And she had done it because Cole Coulter had looked at her broken places and said, "I will wait. I will be patient. I will love you exactly as you are." That promise, kept faithfully every day, had changed everything. Years continued to pass in their pleasant rhythm. The children grew and flourished, each finding their own path. Catherine eventually took over much of the horse breeding operation, working side by side with Cole. She married a good man from a neighboring ranch when she was 22, and Emma watched her daughter walk down the aisle with tears of joy in her eyes, remembering her own wedding day and how far she had come since then. Jamie went east to study business, then returned to help expand the ranch into a proper enterprise with breeding records and contracts, and all the trappings of a successful operation. He brought home a sweet girl from Denver who fit seamlessly into the family, and Emma welcomed her with open arms. Sarah surprised everyone by becoming a teacher, taking over the small school in Redemption, and filling it with her infectious enthusiasm for learning. She remained unmarried, declaring that she was perfectly happy with her students and her independence, and Emma and Cole supported her choice completely, understanding that there were many ways to build a fulfilling life. Emma and Cole grew older together, their hair turning gray, their bodies showing the wear of years of hard work and good living. But the love between them never dimmed. If anything, it deepened with time, becoming something richer and more complex than the early passion of their courtship. They knew each other completely, could communicate with a glance across a crowded room, could sense when the other needed space or closeness or comfort. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party at the ranch. It seemed like the whole town turned out, 3 generations of people whose lives had been touched by Emma and Cole in various ways. There was food and music and dancing, and at one point, Cole pulled Emma onto the makeshift dance floor in the yard and twirled her around under strings of lanterns while everyone cheered. "We did pretty well, did we not?" Cole said as they danced, his arms around her waist, her hands on his shoulders. "We did more than well. We did beautifully. Any regrets?" Emma pretended to think about it, then smiled. "Not a single one. Well, except maybe that terrible wallpaper we put up in the parlor that first year." "That was a mistake," Cole laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. "I blocked that from my memory. It was truly awful. Other than that, no regrets. This life, this family, this love, it is everything I never knew I needed." "Same here, Emma, same here." They danced until the music ended, then stood together greeting guests and accepting congratulations and well wishes. Emma looked around at the gathering, at all these people who had become family, and felt overwhelming gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. It had not been an easy path, but it had been worth every difficult step. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the children had cleaned up and left for their own houses, Emma and Cole sat on their porch one more time. They were tired but happy, pleasantly worn out from the celebration. Emma leaned against Cole's shoulder, his arm around her in the way that had become as natural as breathing over the years. "Do you remember the first time we sat out here together?" Emma asked. "When you told me you had feelings for me?" "I remember. You looked like you were about to bolt like a frightened deer." "I felt like it too. I was so scared, Cole, scared of you, scared of my feelings, scared of the possibility of being hurt again. But you stayed. I stayed because something in me recognized something in you. Some part of me knew even then that you were safe, that you were different." Cole kissed the top of her head. "I am glad you listened to that part of yourself. Me too. It was the bravest thing I have ever done, choosing to trust you, but it changed everything." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars wheel overhead in their eternal patterns. Emma thought about all the conversations they had shared on this porch, all the fears confessed and dreams explored and futures planned. This porch had been the site of so much of their journey together, from those tentative early days to this moment now, 25 years later, still choosing each other, still building their life together. "What do you think the next 25 years will bring?" Emma wondered aloud. "Grandchildren if we are lucky, more gray hair definitely, more memories, more of this sitting together and watching the world go by." "That sounds perfect." "It does it not? Simple but perfect." Emma shifted to look up at Cole's face, studying the familiar lines and angles that she knew as well as her own. "I am so grateful for you, Cole. For your patience when I needed it, for your love always, for the way you have never made me feel like anything less than whole and worthy. You gave me back my life. We gave each other back our lives," Cole corrected gently. "That is what love does, Emma. It does not fix us or complete us, but it helps us remember who we really are underneath all the fear and pain. You helped me remember that I was more than my past, more than my trauma. You showed me what home could feel like. We healed each other." Yes, that is exactly it. They sat together until late into the night, talking and dreaming and simply being with each other. And when they finally went inside and climbed into bed, Emma curled into Cole's arms with the ease of long practice, feeling safe and loved and profoundly grateful for every moment that had led them to this place. The years that followed were full and good. Grandchildren arrived, one after another, filling the ranch with new life and laughter. Emma and Cole delighted in their new roles as grandparents, enjoying the children without the daily responsibility of raising them. They taught them to ride horses and grow vegetables and value honesty and kindness above all else. Emma's fear of being touched had faded to the point where it rarely troubled her anymore. She could hug people freely, could shake hands without panic, could accept comfort from her children and friends without her old anxiety rising up. But she never forgot what that fear had felt like, how it had nearly destroyed her chance at happiness. And she made sure to share her story with anyone who needed to hear it, anyone who was struggling with their own trauma and healing. She became known in Redemption and the surrounding areas as someone you could talk to, someone who understood what it meant to carry invisible wounds. People came to her for advice or just a listening ear, and Emma gave freely of her time and compassion, wanting to offer others the same patience and understanding that Cole had offered her. Cole, too, shared his story more openly as he got older, talking about his time in the war and the prisoner camp, about the nightmares and the triggers and the long road to healing. He and Emma sometimes spoke together at the church or at community gatherings, sharing their journey and the lessons they had learned. They wanted people to know that trauma did not have to be the end of the story, that healing was possible, that love and patience could work miracles. One winter evening, when they were both in their 60s, Emma and Cole sat by the fire in their parlor. The children were all grown with families of their own, and it was just the two of them again, the way it had been in the beginning. Cole was reading aloud from a book while Emma knitted something small and soft for their newest grandchild. Outside, snow was falling gently, blanketing the world in white silence. Cole finished the chapter he was reading and set down the book. "Emma, I want to tell you something." She looked up from her knitting. "What is it?" "I want to thank you for our life together, for every single day, every single moment. I know I do not say it often enough, but I am grateful beyond words for you, for us, for everything we have built." Emma set down her knitting and moved to sit beside Cole on the sofa, taking his weathered hand in hers. "I am grateful too. You know, I think about that day sometimes, the day we met, the day that outlaw grabbed me and you saved me. I think about how terrified I was, how certain I was that I would never be whole again. And then I look at our life now, at everything we have created, and I can hardly believe this is real. It is real. We made it real together. We did. And I want you to know that every moment of struggle was worth it. Every time I had to push through my fear, every time I had to be brave even when I did not feel brave, it was worth it to have this life with you." Cole pulled Emma close, and she rested her head on his shoulder with the ease of decades of practice. They sat together watching the fire burn down to embers, listening to the soft whisper of snow against the windows, wrapped in the profound contentment that comes from a life well lived and love freely given. "I love you, Emma Coulter," Cole said softly. "Always have, always will." "I love you too, Cole, to the end and beyond." They stayed by the fire until late into the night, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from broken pieces. Two people who had learned that healing is possible, that love can overcome even the deepest wounds, that patience and understanding can work miracles. Their story was not one of overnight transformation or miraculous cures. It was a story of small steps and daily choices, of courage in the face of fear, of one person saying, "I will wait," and another person saying, "I will try." It was a story of two broken people choosing to heal together, to build together, to love together. And in the end, that was the most powerful kind of story there was. As the years continued to roll by and Emma and Cole grew even older, they never lost sight of the foundation they had built their life upon. That foundation of patience, of understanding, of unconditional love that had allowed Emma to heal at her own pace and Cole to find a home worth staying for. They lived to see their grandchildren grow and have children of their own, continuing the legacy of love and strength they had established. They lived to celebrate 50 years of marriage surrounded by 4 generations of family, all of them testament to the power of choosing love even when it is difficult, even when it is scary, even when everything in you says it is safer to stay alone. And when they finally passed, years later within months of each other, the way couples who have truly become one so often do, they left behind not just a successful ranch and a large, loving family, but a story that would be told and retold. The story of the woman who was scared of being touched and the cowboy who said he would wait. The story of how patience and love can heal even the deepest wounds. The story of a beautiful life built one brave moment at a time. Their children buried them side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a cottonwood tree like the one where they used to sit and talk in those early days. And on the shared headstone beneath their names and dates was engraved a simple phrase that summed up the entirety of their love story. He waited, she healed, they loved. It was not a fairy tale, it was better than that. It was real and true and hard-won. It was a testament to the power of human resilience, to the possibility of healing, to the transformative nature of patient, unconditional love. And in the end, that made it the best kind of love story there was.